day in Oregon, caregivers are being injured. Did you know workers in long-term care are injured at rates higher than workers in some of our heaviest industries? Industries such as mining and construction. How many of you know a coworker who has been injured on the job? By providing you with this training, your employer is demonstrating their commitment to your safety. Please feel free to pause the video, take notes, and practice what we have shown. The majority of the injuries are musculoskeletal disorders. These are caused by wear and tear on the joints and soft tissues due to overuse. Examples include muscle strains, tendinitis, and bursitis. Caring for others is hard work. Everyday tasks have the potential for injury. But there are simple, inexpensive, and no-cost methods you can do to reduce the likelihood that you will not be hurt. We will review some basic ergonomic risk factors and practical solutions. Today's training will focus on several effective ways you can reduce your risk of being injured. The word ergonomic sounds complicated, but is really just about learning ways to work that put less stress on your body. Understanding a few simple ergonomic concepts will help you do your job and may prevent injury and create good habits that will stay with you for the rest of your life. Let's review the risk factors that we will be looking at today. Force is the amount of physical exertion or efforts needed to perform a task. How much force is needed and how long it is sustained are important factors that contribute to injuries. Examples of tasks that may require excessive force are lifting or transferring a heavy resident or stopping a resident from falling. Posture. Repeated bending, twisting, or reaching can contribute to injuries of the neck, shoulder, and back. Your back functions best when it is allowed to stay in its natural S curve. The muscles that support the back are meant for balance, not lifting. Large muscles like those in your legs and hips are better suited for lifting. Bending while lifting puts great stress on the muscles, discs, and ligaments of the lower back. One of the most damaging activities is to bend, reach out with your arms and hands, lift, and then twist while straightening up. An example of this would be performing a stand pivot transfer and twisting your body instead of moving your feet. Repetition. Repetition is performing the same motion over and over again. For example, multiple resident transfers in one shift would be considered repetition. The more frequent or sustained the task, the more the task will contribute to fatigue and potential injury. Duration. Duration refers to the amount of time you are exposed to a risk factor. The longer the duration, the higher the risk. For example, standing for a long period of time in one place or bending over to assist a resident with shoes or dressing. Let's look at some of the everyday tasks caregivers perform. It seems innocent enough to bend forward when pushing the wheelchair, but notice how this simple activity places you in an awkward position with your neck and back bent. No matter what you are pushing, you will experience less strain if you stand erect with your arms close to your sides. Never pull a cart or wheelchair behind you. Pushing is more efficient and safer. A simple and often overlooked element in reducing the pushing force required to push any cart or wheelchair is the wheels. Regular cleaning and maintenance of the wheels and casters is critical to reducing the force you will need to use. Get close to your work. You use less force when tasks are done within easy reach. Watch while this caregiver puts away a box on the top shelf. Now watch how much closer he can keep the load to his body as he uses a simple step stool to prevent overstretching. By keeping your elbows as close to your side as possible and your back in a neutral position, your muscles can work more efficiently. A task that all care staff are familiar with is assisting a resident from bed or commode to wheelchair. What did you notice about this transfer? You should never attempt this kind of transfer. Now watch while this caregiver does a pivot transfer from the bed to the wheelchair. What was the placement of the resident's arms? What was the position the caregiver's back was in? What injuries might happen to the caregiver? In order to prevent injuries, we need to keep the back as straight as possible, knees bent. Let your legs do the work. Check that the brakes on the wheelchair are set and that the chair is as close as possible. Tell the resident what you are going to do. Make sure the pathway for the assist is clear of obstacles. If the wheelchair has removable arms, remove them. While the best practice is to use a transfer belt when assisting a resident, sometimes one is not available. In this situation, good technique is very important. Observe how this caregiver brings the resident to the edge of the bed and has the resident lean forward with a gentle rocking motion to bring the resident to a standing position. The caregiver's knees are bent and their back is as straight as possible. Watch how the caregiver pivots with their feet to turn. Where were the resident's arms? Did you notice how they talked to the resident so the resident was able to participate in the assist? Here the caregiver is using an inexpensive walking or gait belt to assist with the transfer. Notice the handles on the belt. They provide for better grip and allow the caregiver to keep his body in better alignment. Belts with handles like this one can also reduce the risk that you will bruise the resident when gripping the belt. When using a transfer belt, be sure it is never placed over more than one layer of clothing and that the belt is snug. What other best practices did the caregiver use? Did you see how he blocked the resident's feet to keep the resident from slipping? The belt can also be used for assisting a resident with walking. One cause of injuries among caregivers is attempting to catch a resident who begins to fall. Stopping a fall is a sure way to get hurt and cause additional injury to the resident. Observe how the caregiver is able to keep their arms close to their body. If the resident did start to fall, the caregiver guides the resident down gently. It is not uncommon for a caregiver to assist a resident who has fallen in the bathroom. Your first instinct is to bend over and try to lift the resident out of what is inevitably an awkward location. The location may even make it difficult for two caregivers to work together. It is easy to place yourself in an awkward posture in such an enclosed space. Plan ahead for these specific situations. Develop a fall kit in a clean, empty bucket. Store this bucket with a garden-style knee pad, a clean towel, and a large slip sheet, tube slider, or other low-friction device. An inexpensive low-friction device can be made from a piece of nylon fabric. For infection control reasons, make sure all the items in your kit can be cleaned or laundered. Use the knee pad from the kit to kneel on while you make sure the resident is not seriously injured. If possible, refrain from bending over the resident. Instead, squat or kneel. After the resident has been assessed and it has been confirmed that the resident is not seriously injured, watch as the caregiver places the sheet under the resident and uses the towel to support or protect the head if needed. If your facility has and uses mechanical lifts, a full head support sling can be used instead of the sheet. Using the knee pad while kneeling on the floor is a sound infection control procedure and will reduce the pressure on your knees. Now that the sheet is in place, the caregivers can pull the resident into a more open area where they can work together and perform two-person incremental lifts. Assisting the resident first to a low step stool, then to gradually increasing heights. If your facility uses mechanical lifts, the lift can then be brought in and the resident can be picked up with the mechanical lift. Lifting